Hi, welcome to Great Goodness. I'm Angie Dribbin, and this is Caren Stuart.
Hey, hello.
And we're so glad that you're here today. If you like what you see, please like, subscribe, comment, tell us what you like, tell us what you'd like to see more of. And if you feel like you need, yes, definitely, lots of those, lots of hearts. And
Lots of
if
hearts.
if you watch and you feel like, man, I belong on that, like I'm putting goodness into the world, reach out to us and let us know. And if you know someone else who you would like to see on here, please reach out and let us know. We will be so excited to hear from you. And definitely stay to the end. We're going to start each show. Karen's going to pull a card, a tarot, an oracle. And then we'll have our creative, our person putting goodness out into the world. And then we're going to finish up with a 5 minute prompt just for you. So you want to stay to the end to get that creative prompt. Okay.
Yes, yay.
All right. And so now we will go to Karen and she's going to pull a card for us.
Right. So I have gone to my crazy large hoard of cards this morning, and okay, we're going to be pulling from this deck today. Wisdom of the Oracle. I bet that looks backwards to you guys, doesn't it? Or does it?
I don't know
Does
that
it
it
look
is
right?
backwards. Yeah, I think it
No?
looks right.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
It looks right to me. So this is from the going to be from the Wisdom of the Oracle deck, designed by Colette Baron Reed and Jenna. Oh gosh, I'm going to pronounce her name incorrectly. I'll figure that out by the end of the show. I'll give you the artist's name too. Oh, there it is. Jenna Della Grataglia is the artist, and Colette Baron Reed is the person who came up with the concept. And I love these cards so much. So here's what the back of them looks like. Isn't that nice?
That's beautiful.
Yeah, they're great. Oh, they're such nice cards, I'm telling you. And these are published by Hay House, so y'all can get you some at Hay
Okay.
House.
It's
Fabulous.
it's like infinity and seashells
No,
or like
right?
ocean. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it feels like forever. Like it
yeah,
feels
it's
like
nice. I love it. So I'm doing my crazy thing here where I just kind of spin the cards around. I don't shuffle them because I'm not confident in my ability to not bend cards. So today I'm just going to pull a random card here for all of us just to give us some good juju to be thinking about. And what is it? Oh, shut the door.
oh
Higher power.
wow.
Oh, I'm tapping into that.
Mm-hmm.
So, so this is an oracle card, as opposed to a tarot card. So it is pretty much strictly from the designer's imagination and the artist's imagination. And oh, look at that. So what I do, I love to pull a card daily if I can. And what I do with a card is I just kind of look at the images, the words, and like this one has a number 4. So I'm gonna think about, oh, what does that mean to me? I'm gonna look at the colors. This woman pondering, or is it a woman? It's an angel, a fairy, I don't know. Higher power, the clouds, the colors. And look, see that face in there? Right?
Oh
Is
my
it
gosh.
right? Yeah, there's a lot going on there. And is that a I think
Yeah,
that's a keyhole, right?
I think it is right in her third eye. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a lot going on with this card, and I'm not gonna give you too much of a glimpse inside what's going on in my head because that can be scary. Uh, but I'm just gonna hold the energy of this card, and hopefully you guys might enjoy that. And yeah, I'm gonna just think about that as we go through the day, and certainly as we go through the rest of this show today. Higher
Yeah.
power.
Can I add to that, Karen?
Of course.
I am so thrilled that this is the card that came because my
Right.
um my hope, like my intent for everything that I do, particularly creatively, but everything that I do, is that it will come from a higher power or my higher self, and that it'll be in service. to others, higher selves. You know what I mean?
I love that.
And so to see this card come forward is like it's very affirming to me
Right?
to be
Yes.
here today together doing this.
And I think it's really appropriate too because I'm going to be talking about making. Um, and wow, that is such a thing. The higher power thing is, yeah, I think I'll be talking about that some too because
Yeah.
really, I firmly believe that when you are creating, you are, it's not so much about you, it's a little bit about you, the creator of what physical thing you're making. But a lot of what it's about is being open to
Hmm.
something that's not physically you and just letting those feelings and thoughts and emotions fill you. And then you use your physicality to turn it into an actual physical thing, whether that's a
Yeah.
poem that you type or write, or it's jewelry that you're making, or a painting that you paint. It's not just about you using tools and making a thing. It's about you being open to allow that energy or whatever words you want to use for it to come
Hmm.
to you and then you give it the physical form.
A
That's
thousand
the
percent.
power, right?
Yeah. And I think that's why it's healing. Like
Yeah.
I teach a lot of the grief workshops and just in the healing workshops. And I mean, grief never goes away, but you can learn how to live with it.
Right.
And I've been thinking a lot about like how like how is it healing? Like what do I need to make sure I'm asking of people in a creative space, what how do we get to that healing place? And I was like, it just happens if you just make it.
Yes. Just be open
Yeah.
and it will come. Oh, I may be sharing a poem a little bit later that's my healing poem. And Angie hasn't heard this one yet, but I've talked about it.
Okay.
So I might share. It's a short poem, but man, it packed a wallop for me. And it was one of those things that came to me.
Yeah.
It's like, mm, okay.
So that is a great turning point for us because today, so we are going to have Caren Stuart as our Happy Maker Great Goodness guest. And she is going to, what's going to happen is she is going to share her why or what she's doing, or it's really open to every artist or creator who comes on here. She's going to do that for around 15 minutes. And then we're going to have a little bit of a dialogue about it too. And then we'll move into that prompt. So you want to stay for the whole thing. But let me tell you just a little brief bio, which honestly, this is such a small little tidbit of who Caren is. She's an award-winning intuitive poet. She's an intuitive poet. That's really good. That's very true. Poet, writer, artist, maker who lives in the wilds of Chatham County, North Carolina, where she writes and or creates daily, and she does. She's has a very, I don't want to call it disciplined
Oh
because
no,
you're not disciplined.
that does not
It
apply to me at all.
yeah, but you're there every day. You show up every day to
Showing up.
create. Yeah. Um, she's passionate about joy, love, gratitude, people, nature, and creative expressions in all of its forms. Her poetry has appeared in more than 70 print and online journals and anthologies, including most recently Cackalack 2024, GriffinPoetry.com, and the North Carolina Poetry Society's Pine Song Award-winning Poems 2024. You can find her and her work frequently on Instagram and Facebook as Convoluted Notions by Caren Stuart and on Etsy.com as Convoluted Notions. And that's also down below. You should probably know that she loves chatting up strangers and friends and strangers who quickly become friends. That's how this happened. And
Right?
using the word etc. and its abbreviation, so she doesn't have to actually end anything like a bio, etc.,
Right.
etc. And so, and I'll tell you, Caren is she is just joy, and she is a huge supporter of other creatives. And I really appreciate that about you, and I'm excited to hear what you have to share with us today. I'll give it to you.
I'm excited about sharing it. Ooh, y'all get ready. It's going to be a lot of talking. Is this where I start talking now?
This is where you start talking.
Oh my great goodness. Okay. So what do I want y'all to know? What do I want to talk about today? Making, because we're happy makers, right? So I think we already kind of touched a little bit about my thoughts on making and creating and how it's really a form of channeling, right? Like I'll just talk about myself. I just try to be open every day. I state my intentions for the day with a prayer of gratitude for being here. And I actively seek joy and love because I think that's the thing, right? That's the good stuff. And just try to be open to it. And when I'm creating, that is my giving, it's kind of my way to honor love and joy and just that I'm here. I'm here and I can do whatever I can do and just be open to what comes. So, what Angie asked me to do was to not just talk for 15 minutes, but I'm going to be showing y'all some stuff. I channel a lot of energy into giving physical form to things. Primarily, I'm a poet. I've been writing poetry since I was 5 years old. My parents were both artists and passionate about the arts. And my sister is writerly and very artsy. My parents were, um, and I really appreciate creative expression, and I think it's an important thing to do, just to give for everybody to do, even if you don't think you have the label as being an
Mm-hmm.
artist or a writer or a poet. If you do it, you are it,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you're creating something, you are a creative person, and your creation can be the chicken soup that you made today for your family,
Absolutely.
right? Or it can be
Yeah.
the poem that you write, or it can be,
The
I
flower
wrote
you
one.
plant.
Yeah, the flowers you plant. Yeah, or the words of kindness that you speak to
Mm-hmm.
strangers. I mean, all of these things are your creations, right? It's something
Yep.
that wasn't in the space of where we're living until you channeled it and made it happen. So, um, yeah. Okay, that's my feelings on that. I'm glad to be
Yeah.
talking about that.
I don't want to take up your time, but I love that because I've been thinking about that's why I love great goodness because I'm like whatever your vision is,
Yeah.
you create it. You are
Right.
creative.
You're going to give it form.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I don't think you even have to have a vision. I think and it depends. Like a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
do, like they will plant, they're like, I'm going to paint a painting today. I'm going to do some research. I'm going to get some graph paper out, sketch it, make it this way. And that's great if that's how you roll. Or you can just be kind of seat of your pants, which I guess y'all figured out by now that would describe me. Uh,
And
Actually, I
me.
may not even have a seat. I'm just like flying around. But you just at some point you are going to give some kind of physical form to what you're doing.
Hmm.
Plant the seed to plant. Get the chicken out of the refrigerator, make the soup, grab a pen and a piece of paper and write the poem.
Hmm.
So there is that physical to it. Sometimes it's planned, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you just sit and you're like, well, hmm, what's going to happen? And then it may come to you and you just start, yeah, use what you got and go. So I'm going to just show you some of the things that I've made. I'm going to start with this, which is probably one of the things I'm most proud of that I've ever made in my life, is a poetry toolbox. So when my son was in fifth grade, I discovered that most all fifth graders think that they hate poetry.
Hmm.
So I went to his teacher, and that's when it's kind of the first time in our public schools in Sanford at the time. It was the first time they kind of taught poetry was in fifth grade, and it was like the dread of most of the teachers and and I did a poll with his class. I was like, how many people like poetry? And like 3 kids out of 30 raised
Oh.
their hand. So anyway, being a poet, I was like, could I teach your poetry unit?
Hmm.
If you like gave me the stuff that they have to know for the curriculum wise, can I do it like do a week, come in for a week and do your poetry unit? And the teacher was like, yes, please. Please, yes, do that. So anyway, I was just like, okay, I can do this. This is great. I'm gonna make a contribution. So every kid got this little folder. It's poetry toolbox, and I've worked into the lesson plans the stuff they had to know for their like end of school knowledge test. And I just gave them some handouts that I designed that were cool tools for building a poem, because I
Mm-hmm.
really feel like poems seem lofty to people a lot of times when they first introduce it. It's like, well, that's something old guys did before they died. They
Mm-hmm.
wrote some poems and I don't understand them. So I gave them tools so they could understand how our poems actually made. And we made poems and it was so much fun. One of the things I did, I wrote, I gave all the kids, well, in their thing, they had little strips of paper. So the first day we read some poems, we talked about these tools, and I said, okay, y'all have homework tonight. Take this tiny, this is not much homework. Take this home, write your name on the front of it. And we had talked about alliteration where the first sounds of words are the same, like Caren has a canoe and a canary, same sound.
Mm-hmm.
I said, do some alliteration. I want you to write one sentence and it can be funny or serious. Start it with your name and then have some other words that start with that same sound. And you're going to bring those in and share them with us tomorrow. So everybody did it, which was amazing that everybody actually did their homework. I took all the scrap, all their little strips home, and I said, okay, I'm going to make a poem out of these lines that have each of them has your name in it. And this is the poem that I made. And it's literally just their lines.
Oh, when
And
Mrs.
and I
Thomas's
read it to
class.
them, and you would have thought that they had been given gold trophies, but it was just I'll just read a few lines of it. When Mrs. Thomas's class went to the zoo, you wouldn't believe what they found to do. Daisy drew a picture of a dingo. Olivia ordered an ostrich. Jacob clapped and snapped a jackalope, and Keely caught a kangaroo. Brooke brought a butterfly home with her. Emily saw an elephant eating eggplant, and it just goes on like that. Every kid in the class, they were cracking
Oh,
up. They had
I
so much
bet.
fun. And it was just a really that. So anyway, this is the thing that I made that I got to share with people, and that's my favorite thing I've ever made. My second favorite thing is I made a bunch of these little hearts. When 9/11 happened, I was so distraught, as everybody was. I didn't know what to do. Um, I was volunteering with the Arts Council at the time, and they had a little street festival they were participating in, really like less than a week after 9/11, I think. And I was like, I don't know what to do. We didn't have a lot of money. I couldn't be given donations. And I was like, but I can raise money. So I asked the gal at the Arts Council, I said, can I come and sit at your booth and um, collect money for the American Red Cross? And she was like, sure. So I got the idea. I'm like, well, I'm not just going to ask for money. I'm going to let people give a contribution and they
Hmm.
can pick out one of these little American heart pins. I spent like 2 days gluing pin backs on these little wooden hearts I bought and painting flags on them.
Oh,
So I took them to the thing, made a little board that they were on, just chatted people up that were walking down the street and said, hey, if you would like to make a contribution to the American Red Cross, you can pick any of these little American heart pins. And of course, everybody wanted an American heart pin because we were
right.
suddenly at war. Um,
Hmm.
and I raised $550 that day for the American Red
Wow.
Cross. Right? And that was the first time I ever sold anything. Well, that's not quite true. I sold a poem once, but it was a friend of my dad. So it still counts. But anyway, that was the first time I ever made something that people bought. And I was like,
Okay.
whoa,
And
this
so
is kind of cool.
is that
Yeah.
when convoluted notions took off?
No, convoluted notions actually happened the first time I had cancer. Oh, first time I had cancer, convoluted notions started. And I'm just going to show you some convoluted notions. These are all things that
Okay.
I made. Um, I took a jewelry class and I really liked making jewelry. And I was like, oh, I think I can do this. And then I just kind of went a little crazy. And for 10 years, I was doing shows almost every weekend. These are all earrings that I made. I use natural gemstones and sterling silver mostly. And one thing that I do that I love is I don't ever make anything exactly the same way twice. So that's really important to me. So those are earrings. Here's some of the necklaces. La la la, pendants, natural gemstones. Oh gosh, what
They're
else?
gorgeous, Karen.
I have a lot of fun doing this. I'm wearing one of my crazy necklace things that's actually a bracelet, and I make a changer that's a chain that you can attach to your bracelets to make them into necklaces and little earrings. Big
Oh.
crazy things are my skinny scarves.
You make
Um,
those? You make those
yeah,
scarves too?
yeah, make the scarves. Yeah.
Okay, now wait,
Um,
what is that? Is that knitting?
well, I'm wearing four of them. No, they're not. I don't know how to knit. That's too organized. No, it's braided.
Really?
Yeah. So I'm wearing four of them. Sometimes I'll wear 10 of them. They're just
Wow.
fun. You can wrap them around your neck. So those are super fun. And it's just like I call them skinny scarves. It's just something fun that I do. I'm still rifling through things. These are my look-see photo frames I was making. They're just collaged with little beaded things that I made for the top.
I
That's my grandparents when they got married.
love them. Oh.
Here's some of my random pendants that are all different kinds. This is a hammered heart pendant. It's hammered copper and with ink dye. This is one of my doodaddery pendants. It's just like
Okay,
random. I use a lot of recycle, repurpose things.
I was going to ask you that, and you know there's a key on that one, and there was a
Yes, there
key
is
on
a
that
key.
oracle card
I love some
today.
keys. Yep.
Mhm.
What else? Okay, so I do blooming button bouquets that are just doodads. And a lot of times I like to make them out of vintage salt and pepper shakers. Just
That's a great idea because they're so
right
cute, but you wouldn't
and
really sit them
weird.
on your table. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I made pizzazz or wine glass charms that from then I got this idea because I had all this vintage jewelry from my great aunt, and I'm like, what am I going to do with an earring that these gigantic clip-on earrings? So these you wrap them around your wine glass um, stems. So those, what else have I got? Um, yeah, okay. This is what I'm doing a lot of now is tiny little works of art, making postcards.
Yeah.
So I'm doing a little bit of collage. These I like to use mag dictionary pages and then draw on them and color them in. So this was a dictionary page that had that sailboat on it, and then I put the big shark
What
and
kind of
colored it in.
what kind of
Huh?
ink are you using? Like, what are
Oh my
you?
gosh. Well, I'm using the I'll give a plug to the company, the Micron pens for to sketch
Okay.
with because I don't feel like I'm a really good drawer. So I do it in ink so that I don't end up erasing stuff and spending all day trying to be perfect. So I sketch in the ink and then I use watercolor pencils.
Okay.
So you draw on with a pencil, which is really fun to color with pencils, and then you wet it with a brush. That's another dictionary
I
page right
love
there.
that.
Right? Who knew I could kind of draw a squirrel?
It's a
Right?
great squirrel.
And then, oh, these I started doing, these are kind of, I don't know, they may be a little bit strange, but I love trying to do portraits. So I just pull out
Yeah.
magazines. And so at first I glued the dictionary page on there. And then I'm just doing a sketch in ink and coloring it in.
Okay, now wait a minute. Because your
Yeah.
gluing looks perfect. So, are you using like a glue stick or what are
Yeah,
you
I'm
doing?
using,
Okay.
gosh, do I have one here? I'm using big fat like school glue sticks. You know what? Can I add that in the
Yep.
I'll
Yeah, we'll
add it
put
in. Look, when you go online, when you're online looking at our website, I'll
Mhm.
put a thing in there to plug the supplies that I'm using to do this. But
Yeah.
they're like, it's like a school glue stick. But I went through a bunch to find the right one. So I
It's
recommend
hard.
online.
It's really
Yeah.
hard.
But
Yeah.
here's the thing too. This is a good tip for people that use glue. Work on a piece of wax paper.
What do you
So you
mean when
put
you
your
say that? Okay, go ahead.
put a piece of wax paper down and then put your like this is cardstock that I've cut to the size because these are be postcards that I mail. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of times I'll make a copy and mail that so that it doesn't have the potential to get ripped apart in going through the US Postal Service. But Yeah, work on a piece of wax paper because if you when you're using the glue stick and you run off the glue stick,
Hmm.
it just goes onto the wax paper, and then you can just hit it with a paper towel and keep a clean work surface.
Okay.
Um, but put your glue on, and then put your piece of paper down, and then use a brayer on it, or
What's a
like some
brayer?
a brayer is a thing, you can get it at most craft shops. It's like a metal handle. It looks like a paintbrush handle, kind of, but
Okay.
has a rod at the end of it that runs through a wheel and
I've
compresses
seen
it down.
those.
Yes. So that,
Okay.
or I use that sometimes. Most of the time, I'll just use an old credit card, a
Hmm.
good stiff one, and you just use the credit card to get all the wrinkles out of it, smear it across there. So that. The other thing that I do that is a good sharing thing is the Poetry Postcard Challenge. Happens every year in July. It's a fundraiser for a poetry group across the country, Cascadia Poetics Lab. You send them, I think it's $10 or $20. They send you the name and address of 30 strangers that have also sent them the $10 or $20. And then you are supposed to write a spontaneous poem on a postcard, send it to one of the people on your list every day
Hmm.
for
I
30
did that
days.
one year. Yeah.
It's so much fun. And so you don't have to make your own postcards. But that's really fun for me. And
Mhm.
then I'll let the postcard a lot of times inspire what kind of crazy poem I'm going to write on the reverse side. And I don't always draw the cards. I love to do some collage from magazines, magazine images.
Yeah.
Here's another dictionary page with magazine images. The other thing that I do that is a lot of fun is a thing I call yes and no cards. So I'll use like the dollar store. You can get these decks of playing cards that are really nice and stiff, but like not really something you would. That's the what the card actually looks like. And then use that card as a base for your collage. And so these are just magazine images that I've collaged with a little phrase at the top. So I
Okay.
call these my yes and no cards. And pretty much the process for doing it is just get you some magazines and rip some pages out, just whatever strikes you. Don't just be open, just be open. And just whatever you're just like, oh, that's a cool bat. Oh, I love those flowers. What a mean looking old woman. Just whatever, whatever. You just rip the pages out or the images and get them in a pile. And then you're like, okay, let's see if any of them speak to each other. And then you tear it, rip it, cut it, glue it on the card. And I end up having something that's interesting. And a lot of times I'll pull these cards out later and end up writing a poem about them or in response to.
What does that card say?
It says, try this impression, the artist says. And I actually wrote a poem to that a while afterwards. Um, Here's just another, I'm going to show you this. So I do like to paint and color stuff too.
Oh my
So,
gosh, I
so
love that.
this is on a board. It's really heavy. That's a really inexpensive way. If you think you want to make a
Hmm.
bunch of art and you don't want to frame stuff, you can go to the hardware store and get this I don't know what you call this, but it's about a half an inch thick. You get big sheets of it and they'll
Hmm.
cut it for you there.
Yeah.
I've probably got 10 years worth of this wood stacked up to make things with. And then you can just put a hanger on the back
Yep.
of it. But so this is like a collage. I've got a lot of
It's
word pairs
beautiful,
under here. And then I
Karen.
painted it and I did that pro bird thing and ended up I'm like, oh, it wants to wear flowers around its neck. I'll just see if I can draw that. Painted that on there. And then I was looking at it and I'm like, oh, and it inspired a little poem that I ended up writing on it.
Okay, now
And it's
what's
one
the
of my
poem?
favorite things. It just says, oh, and this is because when I saw the clovers, I like flash back to the bus stop when I was a child, and we used to make clover chains waiting on the bus because we lived kind of, it was a little unruly in my yard, so we always had clover blooming everywhere. So it's just this is what I wrote. She never knew what became of the clover chains she'd make while waiting for the school bus early mornings, but she knew there was joy in the making of them, and that was always enough.
Oh, Karen.
Right? So I don't
That
know where
is
that came
perfect.
from. That's one of those, like, I didn't make this like, oh, I'm going to write a poem on a board and hang it on my wall. That was not an intention. I was just like, here's these boards. I'm going to glue some papers to it, paint it, see what happens. And then what I painted gave me that poem that was actually something I think kind of beautiful.
Oh my gosh, it's more
He
than
told me,
kind of
and it was
beautiful.
true. And
Yeah.
and that right, if I don't know if you've ever made clover chains, there's no reason to make them because they don't last very long.
Mm.
But it's something fun to do and it's creative, and that's not the point that it's productive. It's just something that you do and it gives you joy.
Yeah. Okay, so I think this is a good transition point, and I want to speak back to like you just said something. You said there's no reason to make there was no reason to make them because they don't last that long. Like,
Yeah.
and I've been thinking a lot about this. I think when we were children, we didn't care how long it lasted. Like we didn't judge our interest. We didn't judge,
No, you just go with it. You're in flow all the
yeah.
time.
Yeah. And I shared this with you, I think, so it's a repeat for you, but I recently read, is Maya Angelou, I believe, who was like, just create. So don't think of like your creations as like this irreplaceable value. They're
Yeah.
irreplaceable valuable. Like know that there is more. Know that you can keep creating. And I that was so important for me because when I started creating again, I like went to an MFA program, so I invested all this money and all this
Mm.
time, and I felt like, I need to make sure this poem gets in the right place and this gets in the right thing, and I've got to,
Yeah.
and it was so stressful. It was so stressful, and
It's a buzzkill
it
too, isn't
was,
it?
I was getting ready to say, and I quit enjoying
Major
anything. I did
buzzkill.
not enjoy making
Yeah.
anything. And so and then I drew a tarot card, and I think it was the Four of Pentacles, and I think it was. It's interesting because this was a four today, but anyway, um, and it was about being careful to not hoard, to give
Oh,
freely because there's enough. And I was like, well, I'm not really much of a hoarder. Like that's not my thing. And then I thought, my creative
yeah.
stuff,
Yeah.
my creativity is what I need. I need to just make and like I think I've talked to you about that. I always thought if I was going to create, it needed
There
to be a
needs to be
business or it
for
needed to be,
purpose.
yeah.
For purpose.
And
The
now I'm like,
purpose is giving form to something. That is the
yes.
purpose.
I'm like,
Yeah.
screw that. I'm gonna make an altered book because I want to make an altered book and it's freaking beautiful and it makes me happy. And then
Yeah.
when I dig it out of my closet, I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this thing I made. Like,
Yes, right. So publishing is like that too. It's like you make it. You don't have to send it out if you don't want to.
no.
You don't have to share it with anybody if you don't want to. But if you do, it just ramps up the awesome because you're sharing that joy or that sadness or whatever is
Yeah.
in that thing that you've created. And yeah, and then selling things. So I do sell my convoluted notions, and I
Mhm.
sold a ton of them when I was doing shows. Um,
Of course you
and
did. They're
and it
beautiful.
just well it just ramps up the joy, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm not making something with the idea of, oh, I'm going to make 20 of these and sell a whole bunch of them. That's one reason I just do like one, everything's one of a kind. But just the being able to go out, and even if you do a show and you don't sell anything, it's okay because you're still talking to people, you're having a good time, you are spreading joy, and you're
Hmm.
meeting people, and it's great. And when people love your work, then they get the joy. If they want to buy it, they can buy it, have it, and it makes them happy.
Yeah. I love it. Okay.
And giving gifts that you've made is always awesome.
That is the thing that because I've started making altered books and I'm working on boil books and like things like that and
Hmm.
just these scrappy books and I love doing them. I'm like, what in the world am I gonna do with these? I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna give them to people.
They're great. They're great as gifts.
I,
My
I
family has always, we have always given each other gifts. We still do. I have to show you this. So my husband doesn't think he's an artist, but he is.
Mine
Um,
is too. Yeah.
he made this for me for Christmas last year. Okay,
Oh,
this is a rock that he found in our yard that he somehow figured out how to drill holes in it. He got this vision. Let me back up so you can see how big this thing is. It's like, well, it's this big.
yeah.
And it's I have a ladder is a theme in my life. It's a metaphor for a lot of things. Anyway, he made this guy climbing this ladder. It
I
sits on my
love
dining
it.
room table where I write in my sunroom. And it's,
Aww.
oh my goodness, I love it so much.
And how loved you must have felt, and how seen for him to create that and
And
give
this
that
is the
to
thing,
you.
like he's not a welder. He's like he goes online, he's like, how do you spot weld? I've got this idea for making this ladder.
Hmm.
And then he does it. So,
I
you
love
can do
that.
stuff. This is what I gave him the year that he gave me that.
Oh.
I'm gonna quit showing stuff. I know I'm talking too much, but we got to
Well,
put this in
we're
the
getting
box.
ready to go to the prompt. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
good.
Karen, I
Okay.
love that. It's always
Well,
so funny when you say you can't draw, and then like you're like, and I drew this, and I drew this, and I
well, I
drew
mean,
this.
this I feel bad for this elk because he's like, I don't look much like an elk. But we took a trip to and saw the elks
Hmm.
in the mountains in North
Hmm.
Carolina, and so under this are the receipts for things that we did. Like this is where we paid to get in the national
Hmm.
park, and we were in the woods, and we walked in the woods, and the elk
It.
were like they were walking around us. You're not looking at them through a fence. It freaked me. I was
Hmm.
terrified. It was the most amazing thing I've ever witnessed.
They
Um,
didn't happen to be in rut and bugling, did they? Did you get to
yes,
hear them
they were in
bugle?
rut. They were in
Oh my
rut. It was
God.
crazy, and there was a they come across the same part in the creek every day, and there were
Hmm.
all these people in the woods with the rangers, and the rangers like move, just move, and I'm like, this is really dangerous. She said, yeah, it is. That's why you need to move when I tell you to move. uh,
Yeah.
and just like I don't even know how big the herd of elk. It's amazing. We have elk again.
Yeah.
We didn't have elk for a
Yeah.
while, and now we have them.
The first
It's
time I ever heard an elk bugle, I cried. I cried and cried and cried. We were living in Idaho and we were out there to hear them. And so
yeah
we were in the woods at the top of the not at the top of the mountain, but higher up, and you could hear it coming up from the gully, and
yeah
it's so haunting.
it's amazing. The and
Hmm.
yeah it is it's I'm so glad. It's one of the most amazing things I've ever witnessed. And literally they were walking like 4 and 5 feet away
Yeah.
from us,
Now we're
which is
gonna.
I do not recommend that. I'm not recommending don't go in the woods when the elk are rutting. It's dangerous, but
That's your warning. Now we've got to do the
that's my
prompt and we've
warning.
got to turn this off so our people
Okay.
will come back. And so so don't forget, like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what goodness you're doing. Let us know anyone else who's doing goodness that should be on this. The things that Karen talked about today, including the oracle cards, we're going to have links to in the about section, so you should be able to find those. But if you can't find something, just reach out. We'll point you in the right direction. And here's the prompt that I promised you. Make make a space that feels sacred to you. Okay? So if a candle makes a space feel sacred, if it's a fragrance, if it's your favorite pillow, if it's four skinny scarves, if it's whatever it is that makes you feel comfortable and
Mm.
safe and loved, um, make that space and let yourself be in it. Root your feet into the earth. Feel the roots go from your feet into the core of the earth and feel yourself root into the heavens and take a moment to breathe there. You're connecting to your higher power. And so then from that place, spend however long or how short a time you need there. Some people, it's faster. Some people, it just feels so good. You just don't want to leave. And then I want you to create something that you have not created before. And we're doing this in honor of Karen, in honor of, you know, of the card that
Yourself.
was pulled, in honor of the self, um, that higher power. So we're going to trust. So from that place where we're rooted into our higher power, we'll create something that we've never created before. And if you're like, I don't know what that is, that's okay. I understand that. So I'm going to give you this, the postcard. It's perfect. And you can get an index card, can be your postcard. So just grab an index card, or cut an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper smaller. It doesn't matter. And and then from there, if you can be a collage, it can be a painting, it can be, but just be open and let that rooting into the heavens and rooting into the core of the earth and rooting into your higher self, rooting into that higher power, create from that place. Just even just this once. And that's your prompt. Yeah. So Caren and I are so glad that you came to be with us today,
Oh,
and
thank
we
you.
hope you enjoyed it. We hope you'll be back. We'll continue posting these. And again, like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. We can handle it. So,
Yay, you. Yay, everybody.
and
Thank you so much.
we hope to see you again.